Okay, so today it's our pleasure to introduce our guest, Ms. Cheryl Willette, who's been a volunteer at Freedom House since 2008. Hi, Ms. Cheryl.
Hello.
Okay, so our first question is because Freedom House is a new organization, well, newer too, I guess. It's like to me, when I heard about it, I didn't really know what it was. So I was wondering if you could tell everyone what exactly Freedom House does.
Sure. So Freedom House actually isn't a new organization, although it's probably new to a lot of you, but we've been around for 36 years. And we are a shelter for survivors of torture and persecution who have had to flee their country, and they're asking for asylum in this country. Does everybody know what that means, to ask for asylum? Just in case people don't know, when you are in trouble in your country, when you fear for your life, you can go to another country and you can ask that country to protect you. And that's what these asylum seekers do. They're here and they're asking for protection. In order to do that, they need to be able to show that if they stay in their home country, that they will suffer persecution. And they need to be able to prove that they are being persecuted for one of 5 reasons. That would be because of their race, because of their religion, because of their nationality, their political opinion, or because they belong to a particular social group. Might be like the Uyghurs, or it might be if a person is an LGBTQ person in Uganda, for example. So those are the people that if they stay in their country, they risk being tortured, killed, imprisoned, if they stay. So that's why they come here. And Freedom House takes them in, and we are the only organization like us in the United States that doesn't charge people. When they come, they don't have, mostly they've left with the clothes on their back and maybe a suitcase. And so they come and they knock on the door and they ask if they can stay, and then we verify their case, and then they can live with us until we can represent them in getting asylum. Oh, you're muted.
So do you mind sharing why you started volunteering at Freedom House?
So ever since I was a little girl in school, I was always interested in, especially in people from other cultures. I was fascinated by people that came from different parts of the world. And as I grew older, social justice became one of the things that I was most important to me. And so when I learned about Freedom House, I had just retired and helped raise my grandchildren. And then I was looking for a place to volunteer, and I heard about Freedom House. So I thought, okay, I will learn about people from other cultures, and I will also be able to work someplace where social justice is the primary goal, to help these people.
So we have a question from the chat saying, if you have a threat on your life, do you still get asylum?
Yes, that's the purpose. If you have a threat on your life, that is why we're here, to help you. But we help people to prove their case, but it's up to the government to decide whether their case is legitimate or not. And right now, that's subject to a lot of politics.
So do you mind telling us what you do at Freedom House?
Yes, what I do, first of all, I teach a language and culture class to residents. So it's a lot of practical information about what it's like to live in the United States. What are the basic things that you need to know? What are American people like? As versus, we have a lot of discussion about how things are in your home culture and how things are here. I do a lot of employability kind of training so that people are ready. I help people with resumes. I started a volunteer program so that the residents could go and volunteer in American organizations and institutions so they'd get a chance to work with Americans and see what we're like. And I also have done a lot of fundraising and collecting items that Freedom House needs.
So someone asked, does Freedom House help only with those who come to Michigan?
No, we help people coming from all over. That's an interesting question, because what happens a lot of times is people flee their country. They end up in an airport somewhere in the world. A lot of times that's New York. And sometimes they hang out in that airport for 2 or 3 days because they don't know what to do. And they will ask, they will listen, they will hear somebody who's speaking a language they understand, and they will ask that person for help. And I can't tell you how many times that a perfect stranger will give them the money for bus fare to Freedom House, or will direct them to the internet, or even bring them to Freedom House because they know that these people are suffering.
So I'm gonna answer some of the questions in the chat a little bit later and get into some other questions. So is there anyone that you've met while working at Freedom House that impacted your perspective?
Oh, just about everybody, but I can tell you a couple of stories, and I have some pictures to share with you. I hope, Zahabi, I hope those will be able to be
Yeah,
shown.
I think Laura has them.
Okay, so let me tell you first about Platini, who came from the Congo. Platini joined the wrong political party. That means he joined the political party that wanted to have a new president. And because of that, the government came after him. They murdered his wife and they shot him. He was injured. He lost his leg. And so he finally was able to get out of the country. When he came to Freedom House, he was on some kind of a gerrymandered prosthesis that was very, very painful. He could barely walk. Freedom House was able to buy him a new prosthesis so that he could walk on that. He learned English. He had no English when he came. And now in 2018, he got his asylum. So he was here for 5 years before he got his asylum. He got his asylum, and last year he was able to bring his daughter and now one son. He still has one daughter in Congo, but they're here, and I have a picture of them. If we can put that picture up, that's the father with 2 kids.
I think,
Laura's working
Laura,
on it
you're
right
muted.
now.
Okay, so we'll show that. The second story I'll share, and you may have even heard of these folks. Nadia Nijimberi is from Burundi, and she was an advocate for children. And because she called attention to the way some children were being trafficked and abused, the government went after her, and she had to flee her country. She was running and they were throwing grenades, and she even has shrapnel in her feet and her legs that you can see. But she got out of the country. When she arrived at Freedom House in 2013, she didn't know that she was pregnant with twins. And so this is Nadia. Her husband was not able to come with her. And so Nadia had her 2 baby girls, which we have a picture of them. They're 7 years old now. It's Kenza on the left and Diaz on the right. And they were born while she lived at Freedom House, and their father didn't get to meet them until they were 2 years old. But now this is such a success story. Nadia and Mamba are opening a restaurant, an African restaurant. It's East African food in Detroit. That's Platini and his son Charvelin, and the daughter is Martini. So they came for dinner. So at any rate, Nadia and Mamba are opening Baobab Fair, hopefully in the fall, if permitted. And they do a lot of catering now. You may have seen Mamba on TV. He's everywhere. He's being interviewed. He was just in the Free Press last week. First Presbyterian Church hosted a breakfast, and Nadia and Mamba catered that. And they're a wonderful couple. They're just wonderful. When Mamba first came in 2015, he did not speak any English. Now he has learned English. He's won several grants from about $100,000 to open his restaurant. And they're doing, they're hoping to open their restaurant in September. So those are two. There are so many stories I could share, but those two, they're good friends. They're very close to me. And the restaurant, somebody asked for the spelling. It's Baobab, like the tree, Baobab, Fare, Fare. And it will be on the corner of East Grand Boulevard and Woodward. You can see them working in there now.
I love African food, by the way. So good. Can't wait.
Well, they are wonderful cooks, so you'll look forward to it.
Okay, so the next question is, what is something you learned while working at Freedom House that we as teen volunteers can keep in mind?
I think the most important thing that I learned was how important volunteers are in nonprofit organizations. You cannot exist without volunteers. And I think a lot of times what happens is you go in and you're not sure what you're going to do. And many times the organization asks you to do menial things. And so you do that, and maybe you feel not fulfilled. Maybe you feel like you would like to do something more important. So the second thing I learned is that you need to speak up, because what a volunteer gets as payment is to feel effective. You need to feel like you're making a real contribution. And so never, ever underestimate your worth to an organization, no matter what you're doing. It's really, really important. And I encourage all of you. I've never been so happy as I have been since I became a volunteer at Freedom House, and this is 13 years.
Wow. Thank you so much. While working at the Freedom House, have you seen any acts of kindness that have surprised you?
Not that surprised me, but maybe what I'm so impressed by is that the folks at Freedom House, no matter how poor they are, will help each other out. Nadia and Mamba, for example, Nadia is working as a home health care aide, and they have volunteered many times. They happen to be Muslim, and so when it's Ramadan or when people who are Muslim at the house need to go to mosque, Nadia and Mamba make it a point to pick them up. They have iftar for people. They are very, and almost all of our residents pay it forward. I've learned, and I think they demonstrate, that kindness is more powerful than anything. You can disarm people who are angry. You can change attitudes with kindness. And so I see that playing out at Freedom House all the time.
So I'm gonna take a few questions from the chat. So a few of the questions are talking about like the different places that people come from. So do you mind sharing a few of the different places people come from?
Yeah, I'll be happy to share that. Let's see. We have, just a minute. I wanted to keep that. We have 52 people right now. 16 of those are children 17 years of age or younger. They come from Africa, African countries, Cameroon, Chad, Congo, Brazzaville, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Ivory Coast, Nigeria, Senegal, Uganda. That's right now, but we've had Burundi, we've had probably every South African country. From Central America, we have people from El Salvador. We have people from Haiti, and from Colombia. Right now we're getting people that come from detention centers. And so we have some, those South American countries and Central American countries right now too.
And then another question was asked was how many people get asylum when they're at Freedom House every year, like on average?
You know, what's really remarkable is the national average is 29%. Freedom House's average is 98%.
Wow.
We have 2 lawyers on staff. Right now we have 1 because our chief lawyer was just hired to go to the United Nations in New York. But we have usually 2 lawyers on staff. We also have a lot of the Wayne State University Legal Clinic, the University of Michigan Legal Clinic. They offer pro bono services. That means they offer their services free of charge to help us. So we have a lot of really good lawyers working to help people. And when we file a case, I don't know if you can see this, but it's about this thick. We have all the data that is necessary that goes to the government before our people get an interview. So most of the time we've done such a good job with documenting the persecution and documenting the torture and documenting the danger that people will face if they go back home, that our people get asylum.
And then a question we have is, how has Freedom House grown since you started volunteering?
You know, it hasn't grown in numbers so much, although they did move into a new location a little over a year ago. That's a little bit bigger. So we used to be able to handle like 35 people, and now we can handle up to 55 people. Sometimes we actually end up going over that and we squeeze people in, but we can't do that for very long. But it has grown in the sense that it has way more programs. When I first started, the only thing they did was work on helping people get asylum. Now, because of the political changes and people are waiting so long for asylum, years, now we do job training and we help them find jobs. We do a lot of things like extra things like that. So it's changed in that we have even more comprehensive services.
So there's a few questions in the chat. Someone asked if youth can volunteer at Freedom House.
You can, but right now they're not having any volunteers because of COVID. There were, let me think. I think it was 40% of people at Freedom House did get COVID. And so they're being very, very careful. They're not allowing anybody in right now. I can't go either. Usually what happens, especially for younger people, is that you do a cultural exchange, and that means you come and you meet with the residents and let them ask you questions and you can ask them questions, and so that they get a chance to just have interaction with you. We do have some high school students, but a lot of the volunteering is kind of like fundraising projects that people do in their school for a particular purpose, and then they come to Freedom House with their donation of either products or cash.
And then someone asked if someone at Freedom House doesn't get asylum, what happens to them?
Well, it'll go to an appeal. Sometimes people don't get, the process is such that we put the case together. This process, when people first come, they can't even apply for 180 days. So they're just stuck in the house. They can't work. They can't do anything. The government doesn't allow them to. So you can imagine we have a lot of people who are supporting families whose families are back home suffering, and they can't earn any money. So they live with us. That's all we can do. We can support them, but we can't help their families. Then we put the case in. If they get interviewed, and then they wait. We have some people right now who have been waiting 4 years after their interview, and they haven't heard a response from the government. So they're just in limbo. Once if they get denied by the government, then the case is referred to immigration court. and then it goes through the process there. If they are denied by immigration court, then they will be deported. We lose from that point. We haven't really had that happen to us, but we've usually won on appeal. I sat in immigration court with a woman from Afghanistan a couple of years ago, and it was a really tough situation. She was such an innocent person and such a good woman, but the government lawyer tried to make it look like she was not, like she was just shopping around for a country to be in. And it was very difficult, but the judge did rule in her favor, and she just bought a home, and now she's waiting. She's been here for 5 years without her family. When she left, her little boy was 2 years old, and now he's 7 years old. She hasn't seen him. When she talks to him on the phone, he says, "Why don't you come and live at our house?" So it's a really tough situation.
Another question we got was, who funds Freedom House?
60% of our funding comes from the federal government, at least so far. I mean, that's really, really in jeopardy right these days. We never quite know what's going to happen. The rest of the money comes from donations. A lot of churches, mosques, synagogues help, organizations help, and individual donations. We always are looking for funding. Usually we have a fundraiser in October that raises about $65,000. We can't do that this year because of COVID. So looking for all kinds of creative ways. And if anybody, if your parents or anyone wants to make a donation, you can go onto the Freedom House website, which is just freedomhousedetroit.org, and all spelled out. And there's a place there to make donations.
And then the last question that we have is, do you have anything else that you'd like to tell our volunteers about just anything in general that you want to say?
Just don't ever be afraid to volunteer. You always have something to offer, and it's such a rewarding thing. I find it the most rewarding thing I've ever done, and I miss not being with the people at Freedom House. So follow your heart. Choose something that you really care about, because like I said, the pay you get is feeling like you've been effective, like you've truly helped somebody. So find something that you really care about and choose that to do your volunteer work. And don't ever believe for a minute that young people can't make a difference. You really can. You will influence your families, you will influence your friends, you will change society. And so I'm so proud that you asked me to come today, and so honored to be a part of this. I think you're amazing. So thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate you giving us your time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.